So about 10 years ago, I was wandering around the world, trying to find my place, I guess you could say. No plans, no organization, no idea of what my career would be. And I was invited to live with this family in India. They just welcomed me in out of the blue. They didn't know who I was, me and my friend, and ended up staying with them for about 5 months off and on. This is the mother, Solatsana, one of her 5 daughters, no sons, which was an interesting thing in their culture. This is the father, Simon, who was the only one in the whole village that spoke English. He would come in late in the evening every day and translate all the miscommunications of the day. This is us separating the rice from some stalks by walking around and around in circles. It was a beautiful time, a time of innocence. I became very connected with this family. So it broke my heart years later, 2 or 3 years after I left, when I found out that their house, this is their house right here, had been burned down. Not just theirs, the whole village and area. There had been a massacre, many people killed. It was actually mostly a religious thing. The family that I was staying with had been Christians, and so they escaped into the jungle. None of them actually died, but many other people did die, and certainly their lives changed with this incident. And my life changed too, because I began to wonder, how can I choose a career that uses my talents to somehow help in situations like this? And you may wonder where this is going with the math, but it turns out there was some situation with moneylenders also that I was able to help kind of fight against some of the injustice going on just by teaching them about some basic math. And it made me realize that perhaps one of the things I could do in life is to help train people in math. Later I found out the power of statistics also. And I'm telling you this because this week's lesson is something that I think is very important. It's at the core of what all of us want in life. If you think about anything that you want, what are your main goals in life? Maybe happiness, maybe being able to love others, maybe walking in relationship with God, maybe somehow being able to make an impact on the world. Whatever these are, in order to do those things, you need to know what causes those things, right? If I want to be happy, I need to know what causes happiness. If I want to have money, I need to know what causes wealth. What kinds of things can I do that will actually get more money? If I want to walk in relationship with God, I need to know what causes a better relationship with God. So it can be anything, absolutely anything. Things that sound completely irrelevant to mathematics, and yet they aren't, because this idea of cause and effect, one of the only tools that we have through education to get at that is through research, and especially through statistics. So we have these two ideas this week: knowledge and power. Correlation is one of the easiest ways to get some knowledge about what's going on between different variables. So say between the different types of food we eat and diseases like cancer or heart disease, or perhaps the foods we eat and happiness. We want to know what the connection is. Knowledge is the first step. We can start to get that through correlation. We can certainly get to the point where we can predict. If we know the values on one, we can start to predict the values on another. And this is called correlation. Of course, there has to be a significant correlation, and the bigger the effect size, the more you will be able to predict the values of one based on the values of another. But that still doesn't necessarily help you change it. So just because I know that happiness and having lots of friends are associated. So people who have more friends are happier. People who are happier have more friends. It doesn't necessarily mean that one causes the other. Now, at first, you might think, well, of course, having lots of friends does make you happier. And maybe it does. Maybe that's a causal relationship. But my point is, it starts off as an association. It's a statistical test that we can see the higher you are on one value, the higher you are on the other value. Moving then to causation is a long process. One of the best ways to get there is through an experiment, and we'll talk about that in a second. But many times experiments aren't possible because you have to randomly assign people to a control group. Think about that. So smoking causes cancer. We want to test whether or not that's true or not. So we randomly assign half the people to smoke for 5 years and the other people to not smoke for 5 years. It's not ethical. And a lot of times it's not practical. It's too expensive. So there's other ways that we can build arguments for causation, but it takes a long, long time. And this is why I want to get to another point here. So one of the reasons that the Bible or Christianity or really any religion appeals to so many people is because it makes so many causal claims. Knowing what causes something else, especially if we want that other thing, or knowing what causes something we don't want so that we can avoid this thing, are very, very important in our life, right? And look at the Bible. So this is Matthew 7. Look at how many causal claims are here. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. What's the causal claim? If you judge others, it will cause them to judge you, or cause you to be judged by someone, perhaps God. Ask and it will be given to you. Asking for something, asking of God, causes it to be given to you. That's the claim here. Seek and you will find. If you seek, it will cause you to find. And so on. All of these, Matthew 7, this is Sermon on the Mount, so maybe a little bit more here, but certainly all throughout the Bible we find these causal claims. And notice here at the end, at the very end of the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus finishes it, it says, when Jesus finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who has authority and not as their teachers of the law. In other words, they were so attracted to Jesus' teaching because he was able to just spit out these causal claims. If you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen. And that sense of power, it's not just knowledge because it's power. We can change our lives. We can change the lives around us if we're aware of the causal relationships that are going on. So the Bible is full of causal claims involving spiritual well-being, spiritual health, and I don't want to go into that. My point is that research allows us to slowly build up causal claims and investigate causal relationships that relate to our everyday life, to our physical health also. And so I hope this week as you read through, you start to get a sense of what correlation is, what causation is, how the two are related. Correlation is an important part of causation, but you have to be very careful not to jump to a causal conclusion just because you find a correlation. A correlation's a dime a dozen. The data set you're using this week, you can find, I think it's roughly 6,000 correlations or something. But finding even a few causal claims in there would be very difficult, very valuable. So enjoy this week. Keep in mind that this does have a lot of relevance to your life. It's just a matter of getting there and seeing those connections.